The vibration of the engine was a familiar comfort, a steady hum that matched the rhythm of my own restless heart. It was past 10 p.m., and the two-lane highway stretching through the pitch-black pine barrens of upstate New York was a river of asphalt with no other boats in sight. My headlights carved out a lonely tunnel of light, illuminating nothing but the dashed white line and the endless wall of trees on either side. In the passenger seat, my husband Mark was battling sleep. His head lolled against the window, his breathing deep and even. We were driving back from a weekend visiting my cousins in Buffalo, a trip that had been filled with too much food, too much laughter, and now, far too much driving. We were still 3 hours from our home in Albany, and the caffeine from my last gas station coffee was wearing off. "You want me to drive for a bit?" Mark mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. "I'm good, honey," I said, reaching over to squeeze his knee. "Just another couple of hours. Get some rest." He didn't argue, and within minutes, he was softly snoring again. I turned up the radio, a classic rock station that was beginning to crackle with static. The digital clock on the dashboard glowed 10:17 p.m. That's when I saw her. A figure, barely more than a silhouette, materialized at the very edge of my headlights. I instinctively eased my foot off the accelerator, my heart giving a nervous thump. It was a woman, standing perilously close to the road, one arm held out, her thumb pointing north. A hitchhiker. My parents had drilled 1,000 warnings into me from childhood. Never pick up a stranger. Never stop for a broken-down car in the middle of nowhere. Your safety is more important than being polite. I had always lived by those rules. But as I sped past her, our eyes met for a fraction of a second in the blinding sweep of my headlights. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, with pale, frantic features and dark hair plastered to her cheeks by what looked like rain, though it hadn't been raining. She was wearing a thin, flower-print dress that was utterly inadequate for the chilly autumn night. A pang of guilt, sharp and immediate, stabbed through me. She looked so helpless, so desperate. What was that? Mark stirred, jolted awake by the slight change in the car's momentum. "A hitchhiker," I said, my eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. She was already shrinking, a lonely ghost in the fading red glow of my taillights. "Jesus, Sarah, don't even think about it," Mark said, his voice now fully alert and laced with alarm. "It's the middle of the night on a deserted road. That's how every horror movie starts." I know, I said, but my foot was already pressing the brake pedal. "Mark," she looked, she was just a kid. "And she's freezing. What if she's in trouble?" "Her trouble is not our trouble, Sarah," he said firmly, turning in his seat to look at me. "Call the state police if you're worried. Report a pedestrian on the highway. But do not stop this car." My conscience was at war with a lifetime of caution. I saw her face again in my mind's eye, the wide, pleading eyes. I thought of my own daughter, safe at home with a babysitter. What if it was her, someday, stranded and scared? "Mark, I can't just leave her," I said, my voice trembling. I signaled and pulled onto the narrow gravel shoulder, the crunch of the tires loud in the silent night. "Sarah." "No," Mark hissed, his hand gripping the dashboard. "This is a mistake." I put the car in park but left the engine running. I looked in the rearview mirror again. The girl was running towards us now, her dress flapping around her legs. She moved with a strange, fluid grace, covering the distance quickly. "Lock your door," I whispered to Mark, my own thumb hovering over the master lock button on my door. He already had. We both watched, hearts pounding, as the girl reached my window. She didn't try to open the door. She just stood there, her chest heaving. Up close, she was even more startling. Her skin was deathly pale, and her eyes were a luminous, almost unnatural blue. And she was wet, not just from a little rain, but soaked to the bone, as if she'd been submerged in a lake. Water dripped from her hair and the hem of her dress, forming a dark patch on the gravel. I lowered my window just a crack, an inch at most. The cold, damp air rushed in. "Please," she whispered, her voice a thin, reedy sound. "You have to help me. My car, it went off the road. Back there, in the water." She gestured vaguely behind her, into the impenetrable darkness of the woods. I knew this area. The highway ran parallel to the Black River for miles. The thought of a car skidding off the road and plunging into that deep, cold water sent a fresh chill down my spine. "Are you hurt?" I asked, my voice tight. "No, I got out. But he's still in there. My boyfriend, Jake. I couldn't get him out. The doors were jammed. The water was coming in so fast." Her words came out in a frantic, sobbing rush. "Please, you have to call someone. You have to help him." My blood ran cold. This was so much worse than a simple hitchhiking scenario. This was a catastrophe. Oh my god, I breathed. I fumbled for my phone in the center console. I'm calling 911 right now. Sarah, wait, Mark said, his voice low and urgent. He was leaning over, trying to get a better look at the girl. His face was a mask of suspicion. How long ago did this happen? I don't know, she cried, wrapping her arms around herself. 10 minutes, 20, it's all a blur. I climbed up the bank, I had to flag someone down. You're the first car that's come by. It was a plausible story. It was every driver's nightmare. But something felt off. The sheer, dripping wetness of her, yet she wasn't shivering. Her panic seemed genuine, but it had a rehearsed quality, like an actor hitting their marks. My phone had no signal. The screen showed a dreaded X, where the bars should be. No service, I said, my panic rising. Mark, we have to do something. We can drive to the next town, Mark said, his eyes locked on the girl. It's only 15 minutes away. We can get help there. There's no time, the girl wailed, her voice rising to a piercing shriek that made me jump. He's going to drown. He's trapped. Please, you have to come now. I can show you where. She started backing away from the car, beckoning us frantically toward the tree line. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to listen to Mark. To drive away. To get the police. But the image her words painted, a young man trapped in a sinking car, the dark, icy water rising, was too horrifying to ignore. What if those 15 minutes were the difference between life and death? Could I live with that? Sarah, Mark's voice was a steel cable, trying to tether me to sanity. Do not get out of this car. I am telling you, this is not right. The girl was now at the edge of the woods, jumping up and down, her sobs echoing in the vast silence. Please, he's dying. I made a decision. A terrible, reckless, irrevocable decision. We have to help, I said, my hand going to the door handle. No, Mark shouted, grabbing my arm. His grip was firm. Sarah, I am begging you. Look at her. She's not even shivering. She's soaked but her lips aren't blue. Think. I shook his hand off. The maternal instinct, the human impulse to aid someone in dire distress, had overwhelmed all logic. I can't just sit here and let a man die, Mark. I'm going to see. You stay here, keep the car running. If I'm not back in 5 minutes, you drive and get help. That's the worst plan I've ever heard. He yelled, but I was already pushing the door open. The cold night air hit me like a physical blow. I turned back to him, my face set. I told you, don't stop me. I have to do this. I slammed the door and heard the immediate thunk as he locked it from the inside. I didn't blame him. I jogged towards the girl, my sneakers slipping on the damp gravel. Okay, show me, I said, my breath misting in the air. She didn't say a word. She just turned and plunged into the woods. I followed, the branches whipping at my face and arms, snagging on my jacket. It was impossibly dark under the canopy of pines. The only light was the faint, fading glow from the highway behind us. The girl moved ahead of me with an uncanny sure-footedness, her pale dress a flickering beacon in the gloom. Slow down, I called out, my voice swallowed by the trees. She didn't slow. If anything, she moved faster. The ground sloped downward, sharply. I could hear the river now, a low, gurgling roar ahead. The air grew colder and damper. Wait, how much further? I shouted, my fear now fully eclipsing my urgency. She stopped suddenly, so abruptly that I almost crashed into her. We were in a small clearing that sloped down to the river's edge. The water was black and swift-moving, churning over unseen rocks. Where is it? I asked, panting, scanning the riverbank for any sign of a wreck. There was nothing. No broken branches, no skid marks, no glint of metal. Just the relentless, dark water and the silent, watching trees. The girl turned to face me. Her frantic desperation was gone. In its place was a profound, unsettling calm. Her blue eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. There is no car, she said, her voice flat and hollow, no longer the reedy plea from the road. My stomach dropped. What? There is no Jake, she continued, taking a step toward me. I needed you to come here. I took a stumbling step back, my heart hammering against my ribs. What are you talking about? Why? She smiled then, a thin, sorrowful curve of her lips that didn't reach her eyes. Because you stopped. You were the one who stopped. The others, they just drove on by. Terror, pure and undiluted, flooded my system. This was the nightmare. This was the story my parents had warned me about. I turned to run, to scramble back up the slope towards the highway, towards the safety of my car and my husband. But I couldn't move. It wasn't paralysis from fear. It was a physical pressure, a cold, heavy weight around my ankles. I looked down and a scream caught in my throat. The ground at my feet wasn't ground at all. It was water, black and viscous, rising rapidly. It wasn't the river flooding, it was as if the very earth was turning to water, bubbling up from below. It was already up to my shins, cold as the grave, and it was pulling me down. I thrashed, screaming for Mark, but my voice was weak, muffled by the dense trees and the roaring in my own ears. The water was at my knees, thick and syrupy, its grip relentless. The girl stood just a few feet away, untouched by the phenomenon, watching me with that same placid, tragic expression. "Who are you?" I sobbed, struggling against the impossible quicksand of water and earth. "I was the one who stopped," she said, her voice echoing as if from a great distance. "Many years ago, I saw a little girl, right here, crying. I came to help, and this place, it took me. It keeps me. And now, it needs another. It only lets one of us go if another takes our place." The water was at my waist, the cold seeping into my bones, sapping my strength. I understood now. She wasn't a malicious spirit. She was a prisoner, a lure, forced to reenact her own death to earn her freedom by condemning another. The desperate hitchhiker was the trap, and I, the Good Samaritan, was the prey. I thought of Mark, waiting in the car. Had 5 minutes passed? Was he already speeding towards town, sick with worry? Or was he coming after me, putting himself in the same unimaginable danger? "Mark, don't!" I screamed with the last of my breath as the water reached my chest. "Drive, just drive." The world began to dim. The last thing I saw was the girl's face, not triumphant, but filled with a profound and ancient grief. Then, the black water closed over my head. The sensation was not of drowning, but of dissolving. The cold was everywhere, in my lungs, in my mind. I was sinking into a deep, silent nothingness. My thoughts turned to my daughter's laugh, to the warmth of Mark's hand in mine. I had been so stupid. So recklessly, fatally stupid. Then, a sound, a desperate, raw, shouting voice, tearing through the silence. "Sarah." A hand, strong and real, closed around my wrist like a vice. It pulled, hard. I broke the surface, gasping, choking, my lungs burning as they filled with air instead of water. I was being dragged, half-conscious, back up the muddy slope. I could see the beam of a flashlight dancing wildly through the trees. It was Mark. His face was a twisted mask of terror and determination, his clothes smeared with mud. He had come for me. "I told you not to stop." He was sobbing, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he hauled me through the undergrowth. "I told you." He didn't stop pulling until we burst out of the tree line and stumbled onto the gravel shoulder. He practically threw me into the passenger seat, slammed the door, and ran around to the driver's side. He peeled out, the tires spraying gravel, the car fishtailing as he accelerated down the highway. I sat there, shivering uncontrollably, soaked and caked in mud. I looked at my hands, expecting to see them wrinkled and pruned from prolonged immersion, but they were just dirty. The supernatural water had left no physical trace, only a soul-deep chill. How did you find me?" I stammered through chattering teeth. "You were gone 4 minutes," he said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "I was about to drive, like you said. But then I saw it." "Saw what?" "In the rearview mirror. Just for a second, before you disappeared into the trees. I saw 2 figures. You, and her. But she wasn't solid, Sarah. She was like a reflection on water. And the woods behind her, they were wrong. It looked like a different place, an older place. I knew it wasn't right. I grabbed the tire iron and the big flashlight and ran in after you." He took a shuddering breath. "I followed the sound of your voice. And then I saw you. You were just standing in a clearing, up to your waist in mud, staring into space. You weren't struggling. You weren't screaming. You were just still. And she was standing right in front of you. When she saw me, she just faded. Like mist." I stared at him. I had been drowning. I had felt the water fill my lungs. But to him, I was just standing in mud, trapped in some kind of a trance. We drove in silence for a long time, the heater on full blast slowly thawing the ice in my veins. The first lights of a small town appeared in the distance, a constellation of safety and normalcy. We never reported it to the police. What would we say? We picked up a ghost who tried to trade my soul for her freedom. They'd think we were crazy, or on drugs. A few weeks later, once the tremors had subsided and the nightmares had become less frequent, I went to the local historical society. I spent hours poring over old newspapers and town records. It was tedious work, and I almost gave up. But then I found it. A small article from the fall of 1972. A young couple, sweethearts from a nearby town, had been reported missing after a date. The boy's car was found abandoned near the stretch of highway where we'd stopped. The theory was that he'd had car trouble. A massive search of the river and woods turned up nothing. They were never seen again. Their names were Jessica and Jake. I closed the brittle newspaper, a profound sorrow settling over me. Jessica wasn't a monster. She was a victim, trapped for decades in a loop of her final, terrifying moments, forced to become the very danger that had claimed her. We never drive that stretch of road at night anymore. We take the interstate, even though it adds 40 minutes to the trip. Sometimes, when I'm lying awake at night, I think of her, Jessica. Is she still out there, standing in the darkness, her dress soaked with river water, waiting for the next kind-hearted soul to make the mistake of stopping? Is she still trying to come home? And I think of my own foolish bravery, my refusal to listen to my husband's warnings. I had told him not to stop me, convinced I was doing the right thing. I was shocked by what happened next, a shock that changed my understanding of the world, of compassion, and of the thin, fragile veil that separates a true story from a ghost story. The road is long and dark, and sometimes, the most dangerous thing you can offer is a helping hand.